In this lecture, I'm going to introduce you to armatures and bones. So I'll start off by deleting everything in my scene, and under the Add menu, we have an armature option. For you, you should just see a bone appear in the scene. Now I've got lots of other options because I've got lots of add-ons to do with animation, and I'll talk about those later, but for now let's add a single bone. And you can see that bone there in the middle. At the moment we're in object mode, so I can't select any different parts of my bone. We have three different options with bones. If I click on the drop down here, we've got object mode, which we're in, edit mode and pose mode. Edit mode is for setting up your skeletons, and pose mode is for posing them. So generally speaking, you're building your rigs in edit mode. You do sometimes jump to pose mode, but generally speaking, it's in edit mode. So let's go into edit mode. Now I can actually select different parts of my bone. It's an interesting shape. We've got the tail, the main body of the bone, and the head at this end. The bone will rotate around the head part here, when you're in pose mode that is, and we can extrude bones out from the tail. So if I select the tail and press E to extrude in the Z axis, I can extrude a bone out above this one. I'll do that once more, so E to extrude in the Z, and I've now got three bones. Now they are all attached to each other. I can easily move my bones around by selecting them and pressing G to grab and moving them around, or R to rotate. Now in edit mode, you'll probably notice that it doesn't rotate from the base here, it rotates from the middle, so basically the center of the bone. I'll undo that. So now's a good time to catch up with me, adding in your armature, going into edit mode, and extruding two more bones out from its tail. Okay, let's jump over to pose mode now and see what that looks like. So if I rotate this one now we can see it rotates around the head just there. If I select the next one down and rotate that, we can see that this is a parent of the end bone. And I can select the base bone, rotate that one, and you can see that's a parent of this one, which is a parent of this one. And that's how the bone system works. If I press A to select all and Alt R, I can easily remove rotation. So that's a good one to remember for getting back to your default pose. So what about movement or grabbing a bone? Now if I select this end bone and press G to grab, it just rotates. And that's an important thing to understand about bones. In this sort of form, which we call FK or forward kinematics, you can't grab any bone that is an attached child to a different bone. So if I select the bottom one and press G to grab, I'm allowed to move that one, but not these ones. G to grab just rotates it. And now if I select all, I can press Alt R and Alt G, and that removes any rotation and grabbing or movement, and I go back to the beginning. Now one other thing that's not particularly common, but can be useful, is you can also scale your bones. And they act just like a regular parent relationship, so if you scale this one, its child will scale with it. So I'll undo that. So you might want to pause the video here and just have a quick play with that to make sure you understand the transformations that go on with bones. Okay, I'm going to jump back to edit mode now. And as well as extruding out bones, we can also select a bone and press Shift D to duplicate. And notice the relationship line there. So it is connected, as in a child of this bone here, but it's not physically connected. So now if I go back to pose mode and rotate this bone, you can see that this one, as a child, rotates as well. If I rotate this one, it doesn't influence this one. If I click on this one and press G to grab, because it's not connected, I'm able to grab it and move it. Whereas this one that's connected, it only rotates. That's also something useful to know. I'll jump back to edit mode again, and notice in edit mode, it takes its original position, and in pose mode, it has its posed position. So if you see any movement when you jump between the two, that's the reason why. So I'm back into pose mode, and I'll just select all and press Alt R and Alt G so there's no confusion, and let's jump back to edit mode. Now what we can do is, if I select this bone, is remove this bone from this parent relationship. Have a quick think about what keys I should press in order to do that. And remember, this is a parent relationship. Well, it's Control P to parent, and it's Alt P is clear parent. And I can clear parent or I can disconnect bone. I'm going to clear parent. And now we can see that relationship line is gone. And now this will not be affected by this bone here. And we can also parent. If I select this one first, select the one I want to parent to last, and Control P, we've got two options here, connected or keep offset. The keep offset won't physically connect it, and it will stay in its position and be parented like it was before. I'll show you what that looks like with the relationship line there. I'll press Alt P to clear that and reselect that main bone and Control P and parent again, this time with connected, and you can see it jumps to the top of the bone and now it's connected. So there's two bones right on top of each other there. I'll just jump to pose mode so I can show you that and press G to grab or R to rotate, and it rotates. Now I'll undo that. It can be a little bit difficult to know which one you're selecting. You can press Alt and left click and it gives you an option of which bone to select. So Alt and left click. I know it's bone 3, but that's a bit confusing because I haven't labeled my bones properly. But don't worry too much about that. Okay, so now's a good time to pause the video and catch up with me. Duplicating the middle bone, remember you must be in edit mode for that because you're editing the mesh. And then jump into pose mode and play with that relationship. And then go back to edit mode, clear the parent, and re-add the parent, but this time as a connected bone. Pause the video and catch up with me. Okay, so I'll go back into object mode, and just so you know that you can press Control Tab to jump back into object mode. It can be a touch confusing that because depending on which mode you're in, it can bring up a pie menu of the 3 different modes, or it can jump you to the previous mode. So it's a touch confusing. But back into object mode, I'm going to delete that armature. Now a quick challenge to you. I want you to add a new armature with just 3 bones on top of each other, this time going along the x-axis. So 1, 2, 3 along there. Pause the video and have a go at that. Okay, so hopefully remembered, we start off in object mode, Shift A to add, armature, single bone. Now you may have rotated that in object mode, or you may have gone to edit mode to rotate it. It doesn't matter at the moment, but I'll talk more about those sort of things later on. But for the moment, I'll jump to edit mode, select my bone, go to front view, and R90. Now again, that's rotated right around the middle. It's not really what I wanted, but I could just reposition it, and that would be fine. But what I can do, if I undo that, I've got my 3D cursor in the center of the scene. I could press Shift S to move my cursor to the world origin, and then as my pivot point, I could change that to the 3D cursor, and then rotate 90 degrees. That's if you wanted to be precise with these things. Your 3D cursor can be very useful for when you're moving around your bones in edit mode. So it's a good idea to get used to that. To quickly access the Transform Pivot Point menu, you can press period key on your keyboard, not on your numpad. So I'll go back to Bounding Box Center. I'll select the tail of the bone and E to extrude in the x-axis 1 blender unit. And another handy shortcut that you may not know, Shift R is to repeat the last action. So it is doing just that, extrude in the x-axis 1 blender unit. So now you can see we've got 3 bones, and hopefully you didn't find that too difficult. So if for any reason that went wrong, then do make sure you've caught up with me. Also make sure you've saved your work at this point, as we're going to continue with this scene in the next lecture.